Hello, lovely people. How are you all doing? Welcome back to the book corner. Thoughts on book corner, whatever we want to call it. How are you all doing today? I hope you're well. I am starting to get that kind of, let's get cozy. I've got this fab top on today. You can't really see it. I was scrabbling around looking for a jumper, and my shelves that I've got all my jumpers on, they're really quite deep. They go far back, and at the front I've got all the jumpers that are in common use. And I was looking for a different jumper. I thought, where's that jumper? I was scrabbling around at the back. My hands landed on this. I'd completely forgotten about it. So it's come out today, and it's perfect. It's one my sister knitted for me a couple of years or so ago. And it's great at this time of year where there's starting to be a bit of a chill on the air, but it's not long sleeve, so I don't feel too encumbered by it. It's very sort of close fitting, so it's perfect if I'm, sort of say sitting at the sewing machine or sitting at my desk, whatever it is. It's not too voluminous. Is that right word? Voluminous? It's perfect, and it's kind of snug around the back because it's lovely. Thanks, sis. It's definitely, I think it was about the third week of September, it might have been into the last week of September, temperature suddenly dropped. We'd gone from sort of, 20, 21, 22, really, really warm still days in the garden. Warm enough to produce a sweat. And to suddenly, the other morning, for instance, I went to the garden. I had, and it's long sleeve t-shirt time. The long sleeve t-shirts are back out. So I had a vest on. The other thing is, I put my, vest, long sleeve t-shirt, little cardigan, light cardigan, and then my hoodie. Because it was quite nippy when I first went out. Obviously, by the time I get to the garden, I've warmed up a bit. The hoodie comes off. By the time I'm doing stuff in the garden, I warm up enough to even sometimes take the cardigan off. But yeah, chillier nights, definitely. Single digits. We've had a couple of very near frosts, very near. But I'm still keeping windows open, so the kitchen and the bathroom windows stay open all the time. In the morning, therefore, it's really quite chilly. It's just gone noon now, and actually the flat's warming up. So in the morning, it's really, really chilly, but once the sun's out, properly out, sort of 1-2 in the afternoon, on that south-facing window, it really does start to warm the flat up. Now, in the past, because I so hate being cold, in the past, I would normally either get up and pop the heating on for half an hour, or I'd have it on the timer to come on for half an hour just before I get up, so I'm not getting up into a freezing cold flat. I mean, it's not freezing cold at the moment, it's chilly. So I'd pop the heating on for half an hour, sometimes an hour in the morning while I get going. Then it goes off. Afternoon, sunshine warms the flat. That warmth stays until sort of 8, 9 in the evening. And then generally, because after 8 or 9, most of us are sitting still, aren't we? We're sitting still sewing or knitting. Thanks, sis. So sometimes I put the heating back on for half an hour. But obviously, because of the just crazy situation we're in this country, and I know other countries similar, but it's just, I'm not going to talk about it, I can't fathom it. It hurts my heart for other people. But this ridiculous scenario with our fuel. I've had, since the price cap change on the 1st of October, I had my new projected costs, and it's crazy. This is a studio flat. I've got one regular sized radiator and 2 small radiators. Anyway, so I don't want to put the heating on. But what I found, and this is working so far, so good, what I found is, I get up in the morning and I just get dressed straight away. None of this. To think, you know, it was only a few weeks ago, what, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, in sort of towards the end of August when we had that second heat wave, we were all padding around in the nuddy. But yeah, I would normally in the morning, in those first couple of hours, like I was explaining in the video a few days ago, I'm just not really with it. I go and do a bit of computer work, what have you. Then I get dressed. Now, it's like the second I get out of bed, quick, layers, and loads of them. But what I've been doing is trying to get out of the house and do physical stuff outside of the house first thing in the morning. And obviously, at the moment, that has been a lot of going to the garden, harvesting, sometimes doing a bit of maintenance, whatever. And then by the time I come home from the garden at sort of 1 o'clock-ish, firstly, I've been physical in the garden. I've been on the go, on the move, so I've kept warm, and I've actually built some warmth up. So by the time I get back to the flat and the sun's been on the window, it's just, it's a lovely temperature. In fact, when I come in, I'm like stripping layers off. If I sit still, I need to put a layer or two back on. But that's working really well for me at the moment as a way of avoiding putting the heating on at all. By the time it comes to the evening, like I said, that warmth stays until about 8, 9-ish or so. And quite often I've been active anyway. You know, I'm in the kitchen and prepping, doing food prep and storage prep. Cooking up batches of soup for the freezer, that sort of thing. So obviously the kitchen's getting quite warm just by my activity and by having the gas ring on. But yeah, if it's when the temperature starts to drop at sort of 8, 9 in the evening, it feels like, oh, it's a sudden drop. But that's fine, because with this new kind of schedule, I don't want to call it that, I don't want to jinx myself, but by then that's my time when I'm thinking, you know what, sofa time with piles and piles of blankets. I always have blankets on my sofa, even in the summer. There's something, I don't know quite what it is, there's something about a blanket that just gives security, doesn't it? It's like we're all still having our baby blankets. I think, were we talking about this in the summer? I can't remember, but that thing in the summer when it was absolutely boiling. I mean, there were nights up here when it didn't drop below 40. It really did bake up here, but nothing on the bed. But even so, I'd keep a sheet on the bed, and I'd just bring a little bit of the sheet over my shoulder and under my chin to hold here. Just that. It's funny, isn't it? To go to sleep, we do need something to snuggle into. I wonder if that's some kind of ancient mammalian thing of being in the burrow with our mother. I don't know. But, oh yeah, the duvet's back on the bed. That went back on the bed. I think it was the 3rd week of September. We suddenly had 2 really chilly nights. I'd woken up in the night, I had the sheet, I had the blanket, and I had my crochet, and it wasn't enough. I ended up putting on a pair of pyjama bottoms and a pyjama top, still wasn't enough. I thought, right, duvet's going back on. So it was only one really cold night. Duvet's going back on. Got in it the following night thinking, oh, this feels lovely and cosy. This is what I was saying the other day about, for all of those of us who dread winter, try to take the focus off what we dread and focus on the really lovely things about winter, like the cosy bits. So I got into bed that night with the duvet, and it's all fluffed up and, you know, clean linen on the bed, and it was all crinkly and gorgeous, and I got it all right under my chin, and I think I went to sleep pretty quickly. Anyway, 2 hours later or so, woke up, I'm boiling, get it off. So for about a week it was too hot. I just kept kicking it off, but now it's just right. It's like Goldilocks' bed. Now it's just right. So yes, I'm trying to embrace my cozy time, my evening time on the sofa with blankets and reading, which we're coming on to in a second, but also trying to just, look, I've been frugal forever and ever and ever, amen. I've always been mindful about my bills and not wanting sky-high bills. So I've always been really careful. If I use the oven, fill the oven. But I've never in the past wanted to be too stingy with the heating. A, because I hate being cold, and B, because I think, hang on a minute, I've worked all my life, I've paid my taxes, I'm still working now. Surely it's a basic thing that I should be allowed to be warm in my home. Arrgh. But yeah, so I've always been frugal, but now, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of ways. I'm trying to think of every single little thing I can do to just keep those bills down. I will manage, I always do. But, in some ways it feels hard to cut back when I've already been quite frugal anyway. But this kind of idea of getting out of the flat in the morning when it's cold, getting out, being active, so I'm generating my own warmth with my body, but also sometimes if I go outside, if I'm in the sunshine, though it's weak, it's warmer to be outside in the sunshine than it is to be in the flat in the morning. But yeah, get out in the morning, be physical. While I'm doing all that, the flat's starting to warm up with that sun on the south-facing window. So far, where are we? Second week of October, end of the second week of October, just in the second week of October, I'm filming this. You won't see it for a little while yet. But the heating is not on yet. It's going to have to be at some point. But yes, now speaking of, coziness and snuggle times and finding ways to enjoy the winter, I'm back to reading, which is great. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the books I've read recently. But one of the things that struck me with one of them in particular was, oh my goodness, I raced through it. I gobbled it all up. I was so greedy. I was such a greedy girl. Gobbled it all up in one sitting. It's only a very short book anyway. But I raced through it, and I was about halfway through, and I was racing through it, and I was thinking, Vivi, slow down, you need to enjoy it. We've talked about this a little bit before about, I am always busy, that, always busy. I'm not very good at sitting doing nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum and all that. Fill it, quick, do something. But I do have moments, I would say every single day, when I do suddenly go really slowly, when I'm really in the moment. Sometimes it happens unconsciously, and then I become aware, I'm in the moment. Other times I actively sort of say to my brain, right, switch off, stop thinking about all of that, just be in this moment. And I think it's one of those things of, again, it comes back to something else we've touched on about people who think I live in some sort of deprivation because I don't spend money on stuff. It's about that thing of slowing down enough to really appreciate something. That what we do is I try to do is take even the most mundane thing, and by slowing down and being in the moment with it, actually turn it into a joy. So, for example, a bar of chocolate. I haven't had any chocolate for ages. But, even if you put chocolate in your shopping basket every week, it's about how we eat it. And I don't put chocolate in my shopping basket every week, not by any means. And I love to delay my gratification anyway. So even if someone is kind enough to give me a bar of chocolate, I'll quite often put it to one side for a while, because half of the pleasure comes from the anticipation of it. So rather than getting a bar of chocolate and going, and it's gone, leave it for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Leave it somewhere that I can see it, and so I can remind myself of the pleasure to come, and that anticipation is just heavenly. And then when I do eat it, that for taking my time to open it, hearing the sound of the wrapper, is it a paper wrapper? Hopefully it's a paper wrapper. Is there tin foil inside? I used to like doing this as a kid, and I still do it now. If it is one with tin foil, not a lot of them come with tin foil now, but I used to like to rub the tin foil down onto the squares, and quite often there's the maker's name, or there'll be a mark on the square. It would be like my form of brass rubbing, chocolate rubbing. That's going to be my autobiography. I need to write down all my autobiography titles because I've got a gazillion, but yeah, chocolate rubbing. But yeah, just pressing the tin foil down onto the chocolate, that it's another visceral pleasure. I know it sounds, I might sound like I've gone doolally. But yeah, rather than just ripping it off and scoffing, and then the moment of peeling back the tin foil, and even before I've broken a piece off to eat it, smelling it. Oh, I want chocolate. Oh God, I want chocolate now. Why am I talking about chocolate? And then having that first square, putting it in and letting it melt. See how long I can make it last. And then the next square I might think, this one I'm going to chomp and gobble, chomp, 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 gobble. And then the next square, do it really slowly. But that's what I mean. I know it sounds, I probably do sound like I've been in a cabin for too long. But the most mundane thing, a bar of chocolate, can be this utter, utter joy, utter pleasure. Likewise, even in the garden, there are times, whenever I go to the garden, I've got a list. I know when I'm in the garden, I'm doing X, Y, Z. I've got a great long list, and I get there, and usually when I get there, I disrobe a few layers, whatever it is, take anything out of the granny trolley that I've taken back to the shed. The cats arrive. So normally I will have 5 or 10 minutes of just sitting. It's nice. My legs get a rest after the walk. Have kitty cuddles. Rosie, bless her, now is jumping straight into my lap. This is a girl who a year ago I could barely even stroke her. Jump straight into my lap, sit. But then after that, it's pretty much bum, 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 getting things done. But I do try to, and like I said, it might be a conscious thought, sometimes it's unconscious, but have a job that is lose yourself. Just lose yourself in the moment. Harvesting calendula flowers, or, picking tomatoes, doing the tomato cares, where all my senses, engage all my senses. The smells in the garden, especially after rain, because we have had some rain. Just drink that smell in. The sight, everything is so much greener after rain. The birds, are they singing more brightly after the rain has stopped? All those things. So yeah, I do definitely try each day, no matter how mundane the thing may seem to be, to have a moment of being slow, being engaged, and turning it into one of my joys for the day. Try it. No matter how rough and grotty a day I'm having, I usually can find joy at some point. Namaste. Right, now, back to what I was saying about the book. The problem with books is I just gobble them up. Once I start, I can't stop. Books are my version of Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. Once I open that cover, I can't stop. I am being quite disciplined though, as I was mentioning a couple of videos back about the lights are out by midnight. I don't care how good the book is. I was reading one the other night and I thought, oh, I'll just make an exception to my new midnight rule. I thought, no, Vivi, don't, because that's how it goes all tumbling back to up till 3, 4 in the morning. No. So yeah, I do gobble them up quickly. And I was sort of almost reprimanding myself about it the other day, saying, Vivi, slow down. But then I thought, you know what? And it relates to this first book. It's fine for me to gobble them up quickly and in one sitting, because in a way the books are a delayed gratification too. Often a book will have been sitting on the shelf waiting for ages, so there's a whole sort of tranche here and another bit here that are unread. They don't just sit on the shelves unread, they sit on the shelves, but you know, every now and again I'll wander over to the shelf and I'll take one off and I'll look at it, I'll enjoy the cover art, love cover art. You know, I'll read the back again and I'll build that anticipation again, like I was saying with the chocolate bar that gets left alone for 4 weeks. So yeah, they sit there and I see them, and so even before I've read them, they're part of my life and they're part of that thing that's building that anticipation. So yeah, I don't feel too bad about gobbling them down. And the other thing is, oh, I love this. It's the hunt, the slow hunt. So yeah, I might devour a book in 3 or 4 hours, but it might have taken me 3 or 4 years to find it. And the immense amount of pleasure I've had in the journey of finding it, I've already had so much pleasure even before I've got the book. So I'm going to speak about that a little bit more in a second, but let me tell you which book it was that's triggered all this, slow down, no, go faster, slow down. I have just read 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops. I'm one of them. So this is the 3rd book by Sean Bithell. Scottish guy, has a bookshop in Wigtown up in Scotland, westerly Scotland. I think it's Glasgow would be the nearest main city, I think. Wigtown, it's kind of developed, it's called a book town, rather like Hay-on-Wye is in England, because so many bookshops are there, literary events, what have you. Anyway, he took over the bookshop that he now owns and runs in, I think 2000, I think he must have worked there before. So, the books I've previously read of his, that I've mentioned before, this is the first one I read, The Diary of a Bookseller. And it's just that, it's his diary every day in the bookshop. It even includes how much money they made that day. This was a gift. Where's my gift tag gone? I used my gift tags as, oh, it's dropped out. I'm really sorry. One of you gifted this to me. I'll tell you something else about these 3 so far. Then the next one is called Confessions of a Bookseller. This was also gifted to me by Jan, a friend of mine who lives other side of the pond. Thank you, lovely. Raced through this one as well. And they are more novel length. They're sort of, your 300 and odd pages. So they're a couple of days of a read, a couple of nights. This one is a dinky little book. Now this one was sent to me by Sian. Thank you, Sian. And Jan sent me a copy. But so there's all 3 of them together. Oh, hold on a sec. I've had 3 more copies of that and 2 more copies of that from various friends, like personal, real life friends. Because it's the perfect choice for me, of course it is. It's about bookshops and I love reading. So what's been wonderful, what I've loved is I've been able, because I've had so many duplicates, I've been gifting them to other friends and everyone's saying the same thing. Brilliant. They're an easy, quick read. But this one, and this has prompted the gobbling down, and what I'm going to talk in a second about the slow hunt. it's basically a bitch and a gossip about the kind of customers you get in bookshops, and they're categorised into, there's the expert, there's the family, there's the occultist, the loiterer, the bearded pensioner, and the not so silent traveller, and the family historian. Now, all of those categories are further broken down, and it was hilarious because so it is a really short little dinky book. I read it in about an hour and 20 minutes. Every page I turned, I was squealing loud, going, "Oh my God, that's so true! That's so true! Oh, I know that customer. I know that customer." It was just brilliant. And I think even if you're not a bookshop owner or an antiquarian book dealer or book buyer, I think you would enjoy it anyway. But then what I enjoyed at the back was, there's also a little section on some types of staff. I don't think he got that quite spot on. I didn't think he got the second-hand bookshop, book trade staff quite right. But there is one category about, where is it? Right at the end. Ah, yeah, here it is. The category is called the perfect customer. And this is where I fit in. I am the perfect book customer because, firstly, because my tastes are really wide-ranging. I will read pretty much anything, so long as it's well written. But also, I'm a reader, but I'm also a collector. So there's those two things going on. Not so much in the last few years since going without a wage, because the kind of things I collect can be expensive. But I'm a collector. One of the things I collect is in, I'm looking at the clock, we might not even get round to it again. But the reason I'm the perfect customer is because, you know, like the expert customer, for example, is basically a show-off. Well, that's one of the categories. The person who comes into the shop and asks for something incredibly obscure, possibly technical, purposefully to try and show off that they know something that the bookshop owner doesn't know. And the chances of having that book are, you know, slim to none. I'm the opposite end of that spectrum. I may go in and say, do you have such and such a book or an author? I'm a bit broader. Or a category, like, do you have books on mountaineering, for example? And I might go and look at the mountaineering section and, you know, read it, there's nothing there for me. But I don't leave the shop, and this is why I'm the perfect customer, is because I will look at every single shelf in the shop, and I will always find something that I'm engaged with, that I'm excited to read, that, you know, piques my interest. And it's rather like that, you know, it's the same in charity bookshops, isn't it? That it's not like going to a new bookshop where you say, have you got the latest book by, I don't know, think of a pulp writer, Dan Brown. Of course they'll have it in stock, because that's what they do. They sell all the latest books. Whereas going into a second-hand bookshop, have you got the latest from Dan Brown? Well, they probably haven't got the latest unless they've got a reviewer who sells to them. But also it's probably not the thing they sell. But the thing with a lot of second-hand shops and charity shops is there's not really a lot of order in the shop. So it's not like you can go up to one specific shelf to look for a specific book. You kind of have to look through everything. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about this slow hunt. So when I go to bookshops, I always buy secondhand these days. I pretty much, yeah, I've almost always bought secondhand, apart from that wonderful trip I had to Waterstones with the gift voucher. I will go in with zero expectations. Always keep your expectations low, and then you'll be pleased. Like in life, like we're men. Sorry guys, kidding. But, so I go in, no expectations to find anything, no specifics, just go and have a browse. But the thing is, I always have in the back of my mind a list of books I'm looking for. They may be specifics, a specific title or a specific author, anything by that author, but you know. For example, I'm looking again for do you remember this is one of my next reads. This came from Lorraine. There's the card for the bookmark. It's Patrick Lee Farmer, who I talked about when he came into my bookshop and we fell in love. I've been kind of on the lookout for his books again because I think I'd like to reread them because they're so brilliant. But I'm not in a hurry. If they turn up, they turn up. I'm certainly not going to go on Amazon, and there's no joy in that, is there? There's no joy in thinking, I want some Patrick Lee Farmer. I know, I could go on my computer right now and I could order the lot of them. Where is the joy in that? There's just no, I won't have any human interaction doing it. I won't get to speak to other customers who are browsing in the shop. I almost always end up talking to another book browser. B, I won't get to talk to the bookshop owner. And if I don't talk to the bookshop owner, how can I get to know them? How can they get to know me? How can they get to know what I like if I don't have conversations with them? And if they don't see me every week and they start to develop a picture of the sort of things I like, so that one day, this happened recently actually, as in one of my favourites, having a little browse, and the guy, he was pricing got a new box of books, second-hand, but new to the store, books he was pricing. And on my way in, I'd said hello, we had a quick chat about, I don't know what, doesn't matter. I'd gone and I was browsing the shelves, and then I suddenly heard, "Ooh, Vivi, you're going to like it." So I trotted back to the counter and there were 2 books. They were perfect. They were so me, brilliant. That wouldn't happen if I just went on the computer. This is what I mean about mundane things becoming part of the joy. Yeah, so I wouldn't have conversations with customers. I wouldn't have a conversation with the shop owner, which helps them to get to know me, and then they start to set books aside for me to see when the next time I'm in, exactly as I did with my customers as I got to know them. I would see Simon, that's all I'll say. I would see Simon come in and I'd say, "Oh, I got hold of this a couple of days ago. Do you fancy it?" And he'd go, "Ooh, yes." But also, it's the random finds, the treasures that would be missed. So if I'd ordered all my Patrick Lee Farmer online, I wouldn't have seen, if I'd gone to the bookshop and not found the Patrick Lee Farmer, but in looking for it, found something else that I think, "Oh, I've never read that. I've heard folk talk about it. Yeah, I'll give it a go. It's only £2.50. I'll give it a go." Support your local bookshops, please. They really, really need it. So yes, this makes me the perfect customer. I'll buy anything. I don't always. There are occasions, shock horror, there are occasions when I come out of a bookshop empty-handed because just nothing's taken my fancy that day. But there are other days when I can come out of a bookshop with 10 books. And I do have that little mental list. Paul, a few months ago, was looking out for, I can't remember the name of the title. It had tomato in it. There were 2 books by the same chap. And I think one was like 10 tomatoes of the world and the other was the most expensive tomato. So I didn't have this, I kind of had that ish in my mind, but I knew if I saw tomato on the spine, the minute I looked at the cover, I would know if it was the one that Paul wanted. As it is, he was gifted those. But they're still on my mental list because I think they're something I would like to read and certainly I would like to have in my shop. The joy then of finding something 2 or 3 years after the hunt began. Oh, so all of this joy even before the book has been read. Now back to that shop I was mentioning a second ago where he was pricing some books and said, "Oh, I think you might like this." What were his words? I think he said, "It's you all over." Looked, I thought, yeah, you've got me right. But this was the shop, I can't remember, I'm just going to have to look at the publication date of this book. Bear with me a sec, head down. Okay, 2018 in the UK. Probably came out the year before in the States. When this book came out, I thought, oh yeah, I'd like a read of that, please. So I immediately put it on my mental list, and blow me, I don't know, about a year after looking on an almost weekly basis, I wasn't seeing it anywhere. So in all my favourite little secondhand book places, I spoke to all the individual members of the different staff in the different shops to say, I'm on the lookout for it. If you get a copy in, would you mind holding it for me? Because some places don't like holding books for people, but I figured they would probably say yes to that just because they see me all the time. And then because I'd put it out to the universe, to them, to look out for me, of course I kept looking. But then there's one day I was on the other side of the street and one of the guys shouted across the street to me and he was waving because he'd got it. He was waving across. It's like jumping in the air with it. I was like, oh, thank you. So it's the Michelle Obama biography, Becoming. Now, that was about a year ago, maybe? Look, it's like I'm becoming Michelle. I haven't read it yet. I think when I read it, I'll race through it. But the joy of this book has been around since 2018. So I've already had 4 years of pleasure from it. I think I've over-egged the point, haven't I? But yeah, so I've looked at the clock. I think we might have to... I'll rattle through it. I'll tell you what. Should we stay? Should we just stay and rattle through these because there's another pile to come? Yes, Michelle hasn't been read yet, but I think I'm looking at my stack by the bed. I think she's next. But anyway, yes, I highly recommend all of the bookseller ones. Even if you're not a bookseller, even if you never have been, the fact that you read books means you go into bookshops. I hope, yeah, have I overemphasised that as well? Please keep going to bookshops and not, interact with other human beings. It's part of the joy, isn't it? So, very quickly, because I've already mentioned this a couple of times, it's the Dick Prenneke One Man's Wilderness 50th anniversary edition of a book that was essentially put together from his journals, full of gorgeous photos. Oh, it's achingly beautiful. Briefly, the story is he's in Alaska, he goes bush, builds a cabin, lives happily ever after, sort of. This book focuses on the first year he's out there. So the first half of the book, I think we start in about May, the first half of the book is very much about him building the cabin. Obviously, there's a race against time, he's got to get it built by the winter. And in a way, it's a book of two halves. I need to slow and calm down now. I got giddy talking about book hunting. Because as we go into winter, obviously the building stops, things slow down. And even as we go into break up in the spring, it's very much his observations of the wildlife, of the beauty of the landscape. It's a very quiet book. I'd started reading it when I was on my Auntie Teapot trip with my sister. Hadn't finished it, didn't pick it up again. That was at the end of July, for goodness sakes. And in a way, it was the perfect book to take me into my time offline, my going into quiet time. I got to the end, and as I was reading I didn't want it to end. I wanted him to keep telling me this story forever, because it's so beautiful. And in the last as I was reading the last few sentences, I sort of did this breath in, and just in time with the last few sentences, I did this huge sighing breathe out, and my eyes pricked. Yeah. It's hard to talk about the emotional impact of a book, isn't it? But there was something just so simple, so humble, so beautiful about him. And it was the perfect reminder of getting back on track to be the person I want to be the person that people like Dick inspire me to be the best version of myself, to be quiet and beautiful and appreciative and humble. So I absolutely highly recommend it. That I am pretty sure when I'm thinking about it on the 31st of December, I think it's going to be my book of the year. Although I'm not going to talk about it yet. Oh, I was going to say there might be a joint winner. It might be a close runner-up. I might have to have 10 books of the year. But yeah, beautiful. It was a gift from Rob. Rob, you know, continued thanks. This is going to go on my shelf and stay on my shelf for me to take on and off and dip into from time to time. These days, after I've read a book, I'm tending not to hang on to it. I'm either putting it into the shop or passing it on to a friend or giving it to one of the bookshops that I buy from so they can sell it again. You know, gradually shrinking things down, but I'm not getting rid of that. Then, oh my goodness, it was a bit of a jump. I will show you a picture and then you'll know why I bought this book so many years ago. It's called Two on a Trip by Lady Kitty Vincent. This is her. Written in 1930. I think it's out of print. It's probably out of print or print on demand. But it's a bit of a shock to the system. So it's based in Canada. I think in the northern parts of Ontario. So you can see it's a kind of a logical follow-on from reading Dick Prennicky. And I quite often do that. I'll read 3 or 4 books in a row which have got a sort of a thread running through them. And then I'll take a couple of days break and start into something completely different. Quite often need a break just to get my head out of that particular space to open it up to go into another space. And I thought, yeah, it's been on my shelf for years. I bought it. I must have bought it in the late 90s, I think. So it's been on my shelf over 20 years. And this is one of those books that I've gone into a shop and it's like, oh, this is the collector in me. I collect books on cold places and wilderness. Oh my goodness, it was a bit of a jump. And I think one has to have a context, sort of remember the context before even jumping into a book. Written in 1930, so straight away we know the language is going to be different. The ideas and culture is going to be different. Also, Lady Kitty Vincent. Well, that gives us an idea, doesn't it? This is someone who is, you know, well enough off to go travelling, to go on little jaunts. So it's an odd little book. The vast majority of it is not about her time in Canada in a cabin with her friend. She's gone on holiday. She's gone there for a holiday. She's been before to this part of Canada, loves it, loves the cold, loves the landscape, loves the wilderness. But it's not an easy read because culturally, you know, we've come so far. We've still got a long way to go, but we've come so far from then. How she talks about the First Nations people. I mean, it's not nasty, but it's just in terms which, oh God, they're so grating now. But also, there were a couple of bits and I thought, oh no, that's a prejudice that's been handed down because you haven't actually spent time with those people. So I found that difficult. Otherwise, it's a bit of sort of frippery nonsense that a lady had the time to experience and then write about. Yeah, I'm not recommending it. I think as a curio, as part of a collection, great. I will sell it, but I won't sell it in my shop. I'll sell it as when I'm selling my proper kind of not proper, how to put it, my more niche collector's items. I think if you're a completist and you want a complete collection, you'd be interested. I think there is some value in now reading something that's nearly 100 years ago to be able to reflect on, you know, how far have attitudes changed? How far do attitudes need to change? I don't think we should shy away from uncomfortable truths from some time ago. Knowing that that's how people thought and felt can kind of indicate to us, you know, how we still need to check. You know, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm not recommending it per se, but just relating what I thought. But I do, like I say, I do think there is value in reading older books from this perspective of thinking about how we as a society develop and change, how cultural differences are perceived and how we perceive them now. I think that's important. Okay, finally, Esther. Woo. Quickly, Vivi. So I've picked this up for the shop, and then I thought it was sitting on the shelf waiting for me to upload it into the shop, and then I thought, well, it'd be rude for me not to read it first. I mean, it was secondhand anyway, so it hasn't hurt me reading it. I read The Wild Silence by Raina Wynn. Many of you, I'm sure many of you have read this already. Some of you might not. It's taken me ages to find this. I've been looking for it ever since I read The Salt Path, which was her first book. If I show you there, you'll recognise, can my camera cope, recognise the cover? The Salt Path is, of course, her book about her and her husband Moth's walk on the southwest coast path, which took months. It came about as a result of them being made homeless. They lost their property in a bit of a legal issue. At the same time, Moth was diagnosed with, I can't remember what do they call it, CPD? I'm sorry if I've forgotten the name of. It's a degenerative neuro disease. So this is the follow-up, and the premise of this is, by the end of the Salt Path, I'm not giving too much away by saying they end up staying in Cornwall. They get the offer of some accommodation to rent, so they stay there. So this sort of picks up from there, and it tells, in a way, it's sort of a book of 3/3 really. And the middle third is all about how the Salt Path, the book, came into being, how she became a writer after that, you know, that time of walking the path. The last third is they decide to go on another walk because Moth is deteriorating again, and she feels that walking will help. And so they have it's about a week long, a long walk across Iceland. God, it made me feel cold reading it. And then the first third, in a way, is the first third I loved. The second third interested me. The last third, the walk across Iceland, I didn't really care for it particularly. I felt almost, in writing about it, I felt she was almost trying to recapture the glory of the writing of the Salt Path, and it just didn't have that quality, and it felt forced because of that. So yeah, I didn't care for it. I raced through that section. The first third and the second third, I actually read quite slowly for once for me. The first part of the book, I don't think I'm giving too much away with this either. Her mum becomes ill. So she's going backwards and forwards to visit her mum, and it triggers all sorts of memories from her youth, growing up on the farm and in the countryside, and it's really beautiful. There's a real rhythm and flow to that first third of the book as we dip in and out of her being with her mum, her memories of being in the countryside. She picks up a book while she's sitting. Her mum gets really very ill. She's reading a book at her mum's bedside, and that triggers more. So it's very much, in a way, it's very that first third is very much a book about rural life, natural history, the beauty of it, and I absolutely wallowed in it and loved it. And the whole theme of her being at the hospital with her mum and having to be grown up about it and decisions, and it was incredibly moving. It was so, I'm going to get emotional now. It was so beautiful, and I did, as I'm doing now, get eyes that pricked and a throat that constricted, lump in throat reading it. It was just exquisite, absolutely gorgeous. And then for me it kind of goes off, and so the second third of the book she starts to write about Moth's going to university, he's going to get a degree, and then she starts to write out the memory of the salt path, and it's all about how the second third of the book covers about 3 or 4 years. She writes the book, and then it's the story of how it ends up getting published, and then they get the offer of renting a farm that the owner wants it to be rewilded. That would have been so that's what I really, really wanted to read about, but it's very skimped over. And also the reason I think it goes off the boil, that first section, like I said, it has this beautiful natural quality to it. It just feels like those words are just coming out unedited, just flowing, and we're in that flow, we're lapping it up, it's beautiful. And then suddenly it feels very, there's an archness to it I didn't like. It sort of every other set, it feels like with each paragraph she's trying to give this great import to each paragraph, that this is really weighty and important, and it just it bogs it down. She's in a horrible, and I don't mean this in an unsympathetic way, they are in a terrible situation. I don't know what their situation is anymore in terms of his health. I don't know if he's still alive even. But yes, that's a horrible, horrible thing that's weighing over them, this degenerative neuro disease he's got. It's horrible. But she refers to it, it's almost every paragraph, and it's like, we as the reader, we've understood that, we've got that, we're with you. I want to know, it's hard to put it, it's like, I want to know how you're feeling, but I don't need you to tell me that you're feeling that because of his thing. We know it's because of that. Let it just come out, let it flow. It felt like she was trying to write a great work, a great important work, rather than in that first section she'd just written it and it was natural and beautiful. So yeah, it's a mixed review, mixed bag from me. I do think it's well worth a read, especially that first section I thought was utterly stunning. I would love, I don't know if she's written a third book, I'd be really interested to read that, because her style of writing in the first section of this book is gorgeous, lovely. The style changes, and it like I said, it just became so arch. It was not for me at all. So it'll be interesting to see in a third book if she just lets it go again, just lets it flow out instead of trying to be clever or weighty or any of that. It had the feeling, to sum it up, it had the feeling that this was the first book, people were giving it a lot of weight, saying it was profound, and that's what it is. I think so many people in reviews and stuff had talked about the first book, it's profound, it's moving, that she was trying to be profound. The first book was profound because she wasn't trying to be. It was a profound situation, and she wrote simply about it. In the second book, she's tried to write in a more complicated, profound way, and it didn't work for me. First third, yes. Worth a read as a whole book, yes. Very interested to see what she'll come up with for the third book, and I hope she does. And I don't know the woman. Of course, I feel I've got to know her through the books. I really, really hope they are thriving on the rewilded farm, and I hope at whatever stage they're at, if it's still they, yeah, that they continue, as I have done with the walks, to continue to find that daily peace that they obviously need and deserve. Right, just glanced at the clock again. This is a really long one, isn't it? So I'm going to now try to shut up. No, I'm going to shut up. I will see you all again really soon, I hope. Don't know what for. We'll see. We'll just go with the flow. We're going with the flow these days, and being quiet too. So until then, please look after yourselves. Happy reading. Cheerio.